Welcome to Session 5. It is titled, Building an Ecosystem of Impact, How Inner City Advisors Uses Innovative Partnerships and Smart Capital to Create Inner City Jobs. And the moderator is Michael Bush, principal of the MattMar Group, who also teaches a phenomenal entrepreneurship class here at Mills.
Thank you. Now do I get to?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to have a spectacular time together today with 4 spectacular people. It's going to be very easy. Carrie, could you stand up so everybody could see you? Okay, everybody know Carrie? Let's have a hand for Carrie. All right. She's been on the planning team here. She's in the class, Management 275. And about a couple of months ago, Carrie came up to me after class and said, Michael, we're doing this conference, and I was wondering, we need some local entrepreneurs, people who have been successful. And so I'm like, yeah. And, so I get up my phone, I'm looking at my calendar, kind of spinning. She goes, we need some people that really have proven themselves, have high character. Do you know anyone? And I was like, ugh. And since as a teacher, I'm trying to role model proper behavior, humility, restraint of pen and tongue, all these things. She says it, and so from here down, I was like, huh? From here up, I was like, what? And she goes, we need some people. And I said, okay, all right. So I go home, get on my computer, and sign up to come. Pay my $40. And said, look, I better get here quick, So pay my $40.
We're going to refund you.
Yeah, well, I'm getting to that. I'm building the case for that. So then the next day, she's like, yeah, we're looking for some people like Rob Davenport, but I'm sure you don't travel in the same social or intellectual or business circles as him, but maybe you know some, well, probably not, So I'm like, okay, all right. So then a couple of weeks later, she comes up to me and she goes, Michael, you think you can moderate the panel? And I'm like, okay, finally. She goes, yeah, we had like 10 or 15 people who couldn't make it. So, so I'm like, okay, model being of service, so I try and model that. So a few days later, Christina comes. Everybody knows Christina? Yeah, stand up, Christina. Okay, so Christina comes up to me and she goes, Michael, I'm so happy you're going to be moderating. It's just going to be fantastic. I really appreciate it. I heard you paid that $40. The least we could do is, can we see you Friday at 8? I mean, it's like her brain just changed. I was about to say, I don't need the $40. I didn't get to say it. So Kat and Rob, I want to let you know, they got a new business model here at Mills. Okay? I've been teaching business models. They have a new one, which is you hire people to work for you and you have them pay. Okay? So, yeah. All right. So what we're going to do today is talk about really what we do and what we have a fantastic time doing. I work with an organization called Inner City Advisors, led by Jose Corona, who was up here earlier today. A fantastic leader of our organization, Inner City Advisors. So I serve on the board, and I'm also what's called an advisor, which is a person who gives their time to inner city companies to create growth and wealth in the inner city. And we give our time on a pro bono basis. It means free. Now, I'm sure now, Jose heard the story, he's going to want us to pay to give our time, okay? But up to now, it's been pro bono, okay? And so that's what we do. And then we get together with fantastic entrepreneurs, like you're about to hear about, Jason Mahon from Premier Organics and James Freeman from Blue Bottle Coffee. We get together with fantastic people like this, where we just kind of get behind them and do a little bit, because they're going to take care of the rest. They do great things. So you got advisors, you got entrepreneurs, but what do they need? Cash, thank goodness. 275, where are you? Okay, so they need cash. And one of the things we've realized for years is without that, they can't do anything. And banks haven't been doing that much lately. So a bank was created that decided it was going to do something about it. Kat co-founded that bank. One Pacific Coast Bank. Rob Davenport leads Brightpath Capital Partners, which is a private equity fund focused on these types of companies. So what you've got is advisors working for free. That's a competitive advantage for the businesses. You've got great entrepreneurs, and you've got intelligent capital, the kind of capital that knows investing in inner city companies is a smart investment. It's not high risk, it's very low risk. People who run these entrepreneurial companies that have been on this stage all day are fantastic risks. You know, they're great risks. So that's why we call it smart capital. And we work together. Inner City Advisors over the past 3 years has created 1,945 jobs in one of the toughest economies of our time. Last year, 563 jobs alone. So it works. IC on its own is nothing without this whole combination right here. So that's what we do. That's our ecosystem. A lot of other people doing great things, OBDC, the Women's Initiative, et cetera. We're just trying to do our part. So what we want to do today is to hear from these people on a variety of topics. I'm not going through their bios because you have them. You know, these are remarkable people. If you haven't had the time to look at the bio, please do it. I'm not going to go through it. Just have to trust me on that. You could read while you're listening, perhaps. And I've got some questions for all four of them. The first question is to describe what you do. Okay? Just say something about your business, your opportunity, and then we'll go from there. Jason, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm not sure if you can hear me. So basically, we started Premier Organics in 2002, and through a series of evolutions, we make organic nut butters and seed butters and tropical products like coconut butter and coconut oil, all organic. And we make those and brand those as our basically our concept of way food should be, which is our brand Artisana. So a lot of you probably had them this morning. We package them in jars, and we also work with restaurants, and so that's our brand, and our products are basically raw, organic, and roasted nut butters, and that's it's about us.
I started Blue Bottle in 2002 also, and ours is very simple. We roast coffee. We buy unroasted coffee, we source it a variety of ways. We roast it, we put it in bags, we make coffee, we sell coffee. You drink coffee. The end. We do work with wholesale accounts too, so we have retail shops, 6 retail shops, 2 roasters, one here in Oakland, one in Brooklyn, New York, and a network of wholesale accounts, restaurants, cafes that serve our coffee, and a very clunky old web store that we're about to redo that actually sells for as enraging as it is to use. We actually sell quite a bit over the internet too. So those are our basic channels: retail, wholesale, and internet.
Thank you, James. Kat?
I'll just get this out of the way now, okay? Oh, 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 you deserve a bank like this. Let me hear you say, oh, 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 you deserve a bank like this. We are... So, One Pacific Coast Bank, in spite of my introduction, provides beneficial banking services that deliver measurable social and environmental benefits at the same time that they are financially sustainable. We have recently merged with our great colleagues in the Northwest, Shore Bank Pacific. That's why our new name, One Pacific Coast Bank, encompasses all 3 states of the Pacific Coast. And it is meant to mean we are all in one Pacific Coast, like we are all in one boat. And we consider ourselves part of an overall new development paradigm that respects the economy of creation, the planet, and the economy of justice, the people, as the only really successful model of development. We primarily make commercial loans to businesses, nonprofits, social ventures, community-based organizations, and now, because of our colleagues venturing into specialty foods and agriculture, fisheries, natural resource lending, and rural development lending. We are also launching some pilots in retail products. Those are banking services delivered to consumers. And our first will be a responsible alternative to payday lending, followed closely by kiosk-based and mobile phone-based financial services, the kind that you and I rely on every day, delivered on retail platforms that are actually helpful and with fair and transparent pricing.
Very good. Rob, we'd like you to sing a few bars.
Well, I represent Brightpath Capital Partners, which is a non-musical affiliate of One Pacific Coast Bank. We're focused on providing equity capital to emerging businesses and entrepreneurs, such as are very ably represented on our panel today, who are emerging growth companies, right? So we focus on the geography that mirrors the footprint of the bank, which is up and down the west coast of the United States. We focus on emerging growth stage companies. We're typically writing checks in the $1 to $5 million range and looking to back really superb management teams with great sustainable business models that are also delivering environmental and community development impact. We seek market rates of return on a risk-adjusted basis, but we have a very rigorous screening process. If we can't identify and ultimately measure social impact delivered by the businesses that we consider, we probably don't do it. We're in the privileged position of having a pretty robust opportunity pipeline, so we're able to be pretty rigorous on the social impact metric side. We actually were formed not much longer than a year ago as a result of a series of conversations that culminated with a prompt from our partners over at ICA, who said, hey, look, we're helping to build really, really compelling companies, and we have a tough time getting them financed properly. And as part of that recognition, they began to explore putting together an equity fund that might support their portfolio, came over to One Pacific Coast Bank to socialize the idea. And when all was said and done, we felt that it might be a value add that we could provide given our financial and investment management expertise and complement what ICA is doing on the advisory side. And so we work very closely with ICA on a day-to-day basis along with our colleagues over at the bank and are open for business. So look forward to meeting with some of you after the session to talk about what you might have in mind.
Thank you, Rob. I just love listening to Rob. That's what you sound like when you have 2 degrees from Harvard and a Rotary Fellow degree from the University of Nairobi in Kenya, okay? So that's why Kerry wanted him, instead of me. But James Freeman, Blue Bottle Coffee, very humble, it's created probably one of the fastest growing brands in the United States. James, what made you decide to take the leap and start your company?
Well, that's very interesting. I was a freelance musician before I did coffee, and I was based in San Francisco, but I would work sometimes out of state, but there's a lot of driving orchestras. I would play in the Modesto Symphony, the Napa Symphony, the Monterey County Symphony, a lot of driving. And does everybody know who Gustav Holst is? This is a music history question. Gustav Holst. He wrote a piece called The Planets. If you've heard of Holst, you've heard of The Planets. Gustav Holst was an English composer around the time of Elgar, the late 1800s. And for some reason, and it was around 1998, 1999, I got 3 different concert sets, these different orchestras, and I had to play Holst's The Planets 3 different times in 1 year. And the last time was in Modesto. And I had this moment, it's like, man, if I have to play Holst the Planets 1 more time in my life, I'm gonna die. I am just going to die. And I was, because if anybody's heard John Williams' work, Star Wars, if you listen to Gustav Holst, you'll know, that's who John Williams has been ripping off his entire career, very successfully, more successful than Gustav Holst. And it was, I'd spent basically most days, most waking hours thinking about music from age 12 to like age 33. And I was just burning out. So I was super into coffee. I was roasting coffee at home on a perforated baking sheet, taking it with me when I would go on tour. And that was my little wacky plan B. And I'm much happier in coffee than I was in music. Yeah, it's been a crazy ride, that's for sure.
Thank you. Jason, also very humble, is running one of the fastest growing inner city companies in the United States, the 8th fastest growing company in the United States, 2 years in a row. He'd never say that. That's worth a round of applause, by the way. And Jason, what inspired you to take the leap, the entrepreneurial leap?
I was always interested in sustainability. And I had moved from Ohio to work in the .com. I was a business school graduate in Ohio, probably like a lot of people in the room. And I was in Ohio, and that was part of the problem. And so I moved to California, and I started working in the Valley in the internet tech thing, which was the epicenter of that, and still is. And we were doing database engineering and web development and all of those things. And a friend of mine, actually the first person I met in California, now one of my dearest friends and family really, had invited me over and had started teaching me about organic food, basically closing my eyes and saying, taste this, taste that. And I was like, what is this? So I love, So I've never had something like this. And then, so I helped him, him and I basically had kind of created the idea of Premier Organics, something to promote this concept of sustainability. So we were doing lots of different things, rice and things that we don't really do anymore. And at the time, that was in 2002, and there was kind of a very big downswing in the market of technology. And the bubble popped, and so there was a lot of people, there was layoff parties, and that was that time. So it was well, what am I going to do now? I made it. I was when I made it, I don't know if it's if you win, if you make it to the end, or if you anyway. But I made it, I kind of won, I don't know. But then, so that's when I started writing newsletters and doing this, and that's evolved into what we are today, which is, hundreds of thousands of pounds a month of manufacturing products and 40 people. So we've been really lucky and to follow the path that we did. So
it's amazing. Kat, I'd like to ask you the next question, which is, as a leader of a socially responsible enterprise, how do you balance environmental impact, job creation, the need for profit, preservation of cash? How do you balance all those things as a leader?
So, no profit, no mission. You might have heard that before. And I want to just abstract for a second, because this is what gets me up in the morning a little bit, and not just in banking, but in other areas. It's a natural tendency for business to devolve to concentrations of power that create cartels. And I don't want to sound like I'm, some sort of manifesto here, but so when we go out to make a profit, we have serious competitive pressure, serious. After the 3 years of financial chaos and what I want to call reconsolidation, there's precious little reform. So if anything, banking institutions in the financial service sector is more consolidated, more concentrated, more powerful, and more likely, just by the nature of concentrations of power, to influence the rules of the game. So the question for us is, how can we compete using business discipline and models, but still remain distributed power? Still true to our mission, still have governance that reflects input from communities and people and different interests and so on, but compete. We have to compete. Not only do we have to make a profit to be sustainable and keep paying our bills and get to be in business next month, we're a regulated entity. We are regulated to be profitable. If we even come close to messing that up, they're going to take our charter away or put us under orders that heavily constrain what we can do. So I think our focus on profit is actually recognizing what about our mission qualities, our drive to produce better outcomes for people and planet, what that does for us to give us competitive advantages. It certainly gives us better match for certain sectors of the market who may never be willing to pay for that, like they're not going to pay 25 basis points more for our loan than for somebody else's loan. But on a competitive financial basis, they will recognize in us values that we create because of who we are. So, and this is aspirational. I'm not telling you that we've executed perfectly and in all settings we do this, but we need to bring a solution set to every customer. First of all, having a customer orientation. All the arrows in our organization need to point to the customer. That's who gives us our business. And the customer doesn't sit at the bottom of our upside down, or our pyramid. It's an upside down pyramid, so the arrows point up to the customer. And in the case of nonprofits, social businesses, affordable housing developers, specialty food and ag that's sustainable, fisheries that are sustainable, rural and economic development schemes, we need to bring to them not only mission congruence, which I think matters to them, because they don't want their mission to be perverted either. We need to bring them exemplary service. We got to remain small and agile and let them get to our decision makers quickly. We need to be creative about the other resources we can bring. The bank is actually owned by a foundation. All the economic interests of the bank redounds to the benefit of One Pacific Coast Foundation. That means that that foundation can do anything it wants to support the bank, because in the IRS's views, the profits of the bank are going to go back through the foundation to the communities that we serve. That's a huge competitive advantage over a conventional bank's foundation. Conventional bank's foundation can provide wonderful gifts and donations in the community, can do a lot of soft marketing, making it more likely that institutions will bank with that bank. It can burnish reputations that maybe need a little reburnishing, things like that, but that's it. We use our foundation to do a host of other things to the benefit of our customers and to the benefit of the bank. So we can use the foundation to do all the upfront R&D to develop new bank products that are very responsive to our markets and our customers. We can use the bank foundation to hire consultants who may need to help us get the design right of the bank delivery model, like the retail delivery system. We can use the foundation to attract grants from wonderful places like the Marin Community Foundation, who want to see financial infrastructure built out in the communities of most need. We can use the bank to attract core deposit funding for a bank, which is critical to a bank's ability to lend and create earning assets. We can use the foundation to attract new capital to the bank. Banks need capital to grow just like businesses. So we need to use our creative minds and our business minds to bring the best banking services to our customers, to compete them away from the conventional sector. Because at the end of the day, we will only have influence in steering conventional banking services to something that's good for people and planet if we have market share and market power. And in the states of California, Washington, Oregon, that's a pretty big bank. We are hyper-focused on the business disciplines that you all learn about here: cost accounting, financial statements, metric monitoring and evaluation. We don't just count widgets, we look for real outcomes. We have to have our incentives aligned. You hear a lot about that, I'm sure. So that we know that all of the employees and staff and management of the bank are working in concert with its end goals. We need to be out in communities broader than our mere markets. So in the city of Oakland, of course, we care about financial services and community development, which seem highly related to what we do. But we're pretty darn focused on the state of the educational system and access to good, healthy food, to crime and public safety, to city governance, all those things. Because we are literally dependent upon both our natural environment and our human societal communities for our success. I hope that just answered your question.
It did.
Okay.
Okay. Rob, I'd like to ask you the same question. As an investor, how do you balance those things? How do you hold those things?
Yeah, so we grapple with this, every day with every opportunity that we're confronted with, and I guess we approach it in a couple of different ways. In the first instance, as I mentioned, we have to be able to justify to ourselves and our broader team the social impact that a given business is going to yield should they be successful in implementing their business strategy. One of the things that we don't do, however, is say, wow, this is a really fantastic idea. Wouldn't it be cool if it actually worked? And we're going to step out on faith and give them the support that they say they need and hope for a great outcome. That's what we don't do. We spend an awful lot of time beginning with the introduction and then the ongoing, what we refer to as due diligence. It's really a process of learning about the business and the management team and their strategies and their plans, probing for understanding to make sure that we understand what they purport to do and the market they want to attack and whether or not there's a sustainable competitive advantage that they can bring to bear, along with all that social impact stuff. And we try to ask tough questions. We try to make sure that we have a really good understanding of the risk, and more importantly, that the entrepreneurs that we back have a good understanding of the risks that they face. Because we think that there are a lot of good ideas that deserve support, and some of those ideas fall into the realm of philanthropy. And that's important work. And it's an important part of the mix that I think we're all very concerned about. But that's not our role at Brightpath Capital Partners. Our role is to deploy capital in a way that's going to lead to an attractive return on the capital, while promoting businesses that, as I say, think of themselves in a much more holistic way. Not only about, hey, can I sell this at a profit and make a lot of money and, buy another house, so on and so forth. But instead, can I offer a product or a service at a value that's compelling to the customers that we're serving, where we can generate a profit so that we can return capital to our shareholders and invest in our business such that we can grow, right? So I guess, Michael, as you ask about balancing the impact side with the profit side, we see them working in concert. We do think there's a balancing process that has to take place, but we think that doing this work is actually harder than being more narrowly focused on profit only. It's harder, right? And so generally, the quality of the entrepreneurs that we come across, it's higher. They're more capable, they're more committed, they're more imaginative, and they're more broad thinking in terms of the way that they're trying to make a mark, through their businesses and through their related activities. And that's what makes our work so rewarding, because we get to work with really smart, really thoughtful, imaginative folks who have figured out ways to both make money and improve the world that we live in. And it sounds a little bit hokey, but it's absolutely true. And those folks that we come across, they don't flinch when we talk about competitive advantage and industry structure and how are you going to compete on the basis. Not everybody's going to see the world the way you do as a manager, for instance, as an entrepreneur. Some customers just want to spend their money on things that they need and receive a value for it. That's the world that we live in, right? So we want to make sure that we can address markets where people aren't particularly conscious necessarily, have that work, and even as that happens, generate that social impact that we seek. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you, Rob. We want to open it up for questions now. So, got some banker, private equity. Yep, I think, let's see.
So I have two questions. So one for Kat. You talked a lot about the fact that the bank is owned by a foundation. Can you just talk a little bit about how crucial that foundation ownership is to allowing you to pursue your mission? And then also a question for you about most of the social businesses that I study have moderate returns, but not excessive returns. They're moderately profitable, but they're never going to be, or they haven't achieved those levels of profitability yet that would normally be attractive to private equity. So what kinds of businesses are you finding that have both high enough returns that are attractive to private equity, but also have the social and/or environmental mission?
Well, so interestingly enough, the question you're asking, Rob, pertains to our foundation ownership too, which starts with slow capital or patient capital. You've heard those terms, and we're actually building off of a much larger movement, both in social and community investment, impact investing, and socially responsible banking. So the short bank parent company of the last 25 years, self-help credit union. There were a lot of models before us, and we're simply trying to go 3.0 version. And there is a small but powerful world of social impact investing that we take a lot of our lessons from. So when we wrote the business plan for the bank, which we threw out in the first 9 months, but anyway, you do that, you have to, as I heard someone say, it's not that the plan is worthwhile, but the planning is essential. So in our planning, we always carried a fairly low return relative to market returns in capital. Then over the next 3 years, the market returns actually met us down there and went below and came back up again. So over the long haul, maybe we will have sort of a competitive return. But starting with slow and patient capital, the mission alignment of being foundation owned is critical. That doesn't mean the business discipline goes out the door, but we do a lot of, Nicole's peeking in the aisle, we do a lot of work with East Bay Community Foundation. Well, it's good and bad for them because they don't need to doubt that our aims are the same as theirs. We don't hand out big grants to them either, which is probably a bummer, but we have a really close working relationship, and we can synthesize our work in the communities to try to do what we do best and learn from what they do best and make the two parts greater than the sum of them. So I just think being owned by a foundation allows us to propose something like kiosk banking, really piggybacking off someone else's retail system in a way that doesn't make them think, I'm not sure I can trust you to do that. Now, they should hold us to execution. They should be worried that we blow it, but we're not in there trying to be exploitive, to meet capital return expectations somewhere. We've got our patient capital. But Robert Wilkins was in the room earlier. He's one of our foundation board directors. He is an incredible stickler to holding us to mission. He also runs a very large, attractive retail network called the East Bay YMCAs that might one day be a beautiful platform for delivering beneficial banking services. So I hope this is a part of a new paradigm that gets used elsewhere, and that's the final thing. So if we can create sort of a bank in the box owned by a foundation that could go roll out to other regions with other good local governance, that'd be a beautiful thing.
Next question.
Rob, hey, Michael.
Oh.
very quickly so we could get back to more questions. So nut butters and coffee, right, would be two perfect examples of business models that sing, as I've come to understand somewhat indirectly, that we would love to be a part of to the extent that their growth requirements dictate they take on more capital. One investment that we've completed right at the end of last year was a company called Sungevity, which is a residential solar company that is literally rolling out residential solar across the country as we speak. And we think that the macro trends in terms of the cost of energy and the advantages of solar and the path that solar is on to reach grid parity are terrific. And we think that we have a very talented management team that can execute against a really big addressable market opportunity. So that would be an outstanding example of a couple of businesses that offer up, once again, huge social impact as well as attractive financial profiles. The other thing that I would just echo that Kat mentioned is that one of the ways that we're in a very competitive business as well, and notwithstanding our triple bottom line focus, I can assure you that if it's an attractive deal with a great management team, that there are other providers of capital, including mainstream providers of capital, who are competing to back those businesses, right? So we're called upon by the entrepreneurs to talk through and demonstrate how not only are we going to be able to provide them capital on competitive terms, but are we going to be able to be a value-added partner as they're grappling with the various challenges that they have, operational, financial, and strategic, over the course of their growth path. And we feel that we are in a position to be that kind of partner. And just from a financial standpoint, to address that aspect of your question, we're somewhat more patient than our competitors in the mainstream venture community, right? So, often enough, a venture capitalist will write you a check, and as they're writing the check, they're planning for the liquidity event on the back end, right? And sometimes they're having M&A discussions with potential acquirers literally as they're writing the check. That's not really our orientation. Our orientation is that we want to be a part of building terrific customer franchises, great businesses that are going to be vital in the communities in which they operate and serve. And, the financial part, if you get that right, follows just fine. And we're very comfortable with that approach.
Thank you, Rob. Ben?
Let me just say, I'm Ben Delaney. I'm with the Stride Center and Reliatech. And Kat, I want to thank you. The bank has been behind us, and I want to tell all you folks, I never thought I would say this in a public place or private. This is a great bank. And I'm not a big fan of banks, I have to tell you. We've been with all of them. We love working with you folks. I wanted to ask you, we're a nonprofit with a social enterprise. One of the questions that we're wrestling with all the time is the monetization of our social mission. For example, we give away computers. We train people and get them jobs. How do you value that? Obviously, the bank saw value. You've lent us money. But how do you look at that, and how do you value these sort of intangibles that social enterprises are often based on?
As luck would have it, I just came from a 2-hour tutorial with our new colleagues from the Northwest and Sarah Olson from Social Venture Technology, pushing us further along on doing that better. So right now we're at the level where we can count kind of output for both CRA purposes, but for funders too. But it's not enough because it doesn't go to attribution. It doesn't go to a wellness model of how do you value what you prevented from, or how do you value what you protected, or things like that. But it's a constant conversation that's highly facilitated by a pretty robust industry out there trying to do that. So from Green America, formerly Co-op America, to SROI, Social Investment Forum, there are a lot of groups out there wrestling with this. Personally, I think we're going to have to get something that works in the meantime that passes kind of the smell test. Like, when oh, that would have happened even if we didn't do it, we better not really count that. Or that wasn't the Wendell-Berry 100% solution because it solved one problem and created two more. Or that wasn't the right calculus of our opportunity cost. That was a good use of our capital, but it wasn't the best of the options in front of us. And I think it's going to be an ongoing process. And I don't want to, it's not going to be as nebulous as I'm allowed to make it sound right now. I'll tell you that because our board won't tolerate that, either board, the board of the bank or the board of the foundation. But it doesn't, the only thing I will say is I believe it doesn't all come down to dollars or monetization. That there is a concept called value, and we kind of know what it is, and it will never just kind of dilute to dollars, which makes me want to be part of a larger movement where I actually, half my life I spend in kind of regenerative agriculture, and there's a huge overlap of finance and food, and I think we're going to know from our food colleagues when we've got it right, and we're going to be able to tell them how they could get it right too. So a larger community looking at society based on value.
Thanks, Kat. Our next question is for our entrepreneurs. So somebody wants to ask our entrepreneurs a question.
I'm wondering.
Can you hold the microphone a little closer, please?
Sorry,
Thank
thanks.
you.
I'm wondering how you would give guidance to other people who are looking to create organizations that work as well as yours. There's all kinds of books and programs and places we can go. It's probably too much information. Is there a way to synthesize the process so that we can have a guideline similar to an entrepreneurship class that you say, well, this is how we did it. This is where we found this part of the information. Can you share some of that with us, please?
James and Jason, please.
You want to start?
Sure. So there's no perfect way, in my opinion, and there's always like an internal doubt, like, is this the right way, or is that the way, or should I? And then retrospectively, it's, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that. But I think it really boils down to 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There's like a constant process. And hopefully, you're not doing the 1 step forward, 2 steps back, but that happens every once in a while. So, like you try to keep it to 1 back, So, and I think this panel is really about kind of, in my mind, this panel is about building the community around you, so you can figure out, like, well, which way is forward, with finance and how to access it. The beginning of our business was with the SBDC in San Francisco, writing a business plan, giving it to the SBDC appointed advisor, who was awesome, and then she just, that process over and over and over again, meanwhile trying to grow the business. Michael Bush is excellent. ICA is an excellent, I think, unparalleled group in the country. Kat and Rob, but there's a lot more, and I think it's having faith in yourself to make the decision, and learning, and then like jumping and making that decision, even though it might not be the right one.
Is that a question that comes from you, like, have a small business, you want to get bigger, or do you don't have it, your business yet?
And it's struggling with next steps. It's struggling with the plethora of organizations and books and workbooks and videos.
Books.
To synthesize, okay, I went to business school here right away, and and taking the knowledge base that I have and expanding on that in a way that will help us to create the kind of success that would make us be attractive in the marketplace, and that will allow us to meet our goals both in the community, in the world, and economically.
Well, I mean, my perspective might not have enough in common sort of with yours, but if I look at my company now, our operations manager was the first barista I ever trained, And the head of our tech department was the second barista I ever hired. And the wholesale manager and the wholesale lead were two women that would help me on Saturdays at the Ferry Building at my cart when my other employee didn't show up. And they're running the company. The production manager is the first delivery driver I ever hired. So sometimes it's I didn't know. It's like, and then I'm going to promote her, and she's going to be the operations manager. But I think back, and it's like, that's all I ever needed were those people right there. And it could be the people you have now. That's all you ever need.
That's a great answer. Next question. Right here in the front.
I have a question. Wait for
The mic's, here you go.
Okay, well, I'm going to just stand
Practical.
right
Just
okay.
put it right up there.
My question to you is, as we're talking about balance between finances and our globe, essentially, as an entrepreneur, how do you find balance in your own life between the sacrifices that you've had to make and the benefits that you get from being an entrepreneur?
Great question. I want to hear this.
It's good to have a child because, if you want to change diapers and spend time with, in my case, him, and be an actual parent, then you have to delegate. And if you learn to delegate, then, that just takes so much stress and strain off. So for me, it was like consciously, my son is 1 year older than my business. So it was hard. There were times I had to get up very early or, take care of him and then go back and do more work and go to bed very late. But eventually I was able to sort of make those choices. The same kind of choices that make you a good parent are going to be the choices that make you a good business person, I think. And so just delegating the stuff that's not changing diapers, basically, was very helpful for me.
Jason?
I think that's the name of the game. If you can figure out that one, you're good. And I think there's a shift, where you're all work all the time, and and it's like you can't shut it off, and you're laying in bed and you're thinking about the things that are going to happen tomorrow, or there's you just can't stop the wheels from turning. And then there's also other times when you need to get away from it all and breathe and do those types of things, get away from the environment and pull yourself out of that environment. That's a big challenge for me, so I can admit that that's something that I struggle with, and also delegation can help, I'll say that, but that's a skill too that is constantly being learned and refined. So thanks for your question, though. Call me when you get the answer.
I think delegation, that's very, very good. And I think if you want balance, get a job. Right there?
So this question is for all the panelists, if you can indulge me for a second. But typically with entrepreneurs, you start in 2002. You're quite a few years into this now, but you may be looking at passing that off to your 1-year-old son or doing something else with your life someday, I don't know. And then from a venture capital or private equity standpoint, typically you are looking for an exit to return capital. Certainly from a bank, you're looking at returning the loan. That may be a different proposition. So my question is, what is the exit? I mean, when you're looking at selling your company, there might be things that aren't so great about that idea, depending on how your acquirers, or if you're looking at going public, you may suddenly be measured against other companies that don't have this kind of mission alignment. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Who would you like to hear from, an entrepreneur or one of the investor or banker?
Finance side and the entrepreneur side.
Okay, so one of each.
So just to get started, our perspective is we want to build businesses that ultimately generate cash, right?
What, Rob? Can you say it one more time, please?
Yeah. Generate cash.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Call us crazy.
There you go.
But, and the reason why I think that's relevant to the question that you asked is that if a business is generating cash, we are prepared to, take return of capital and return on investment in the form of dividends. or maybe even there's ways of recapitalizing the business such that you can, have a liquidity event for the entrepreneurs and the management team and the financial backers of the business that have worked hard to create the success, and with the cash flow, essentially pay back the financing that you take on to create that liquidity event. And then, of course, there's always, going public, which, is a higher hurdle, let us say. And then one I think that's a little bit tricky is trade sale or M&A, selling the business off. And once again, the perspective that we bring to that is, look, we seek to get a return on capital such that we can go back to our limited partner and prospective limited partners and say, hey, this is a profitable activity and we need to do more of it. So invest in our fund so that we can put that money back to work in the marketplace. That's an important aspect of what we do. Notwithstanding that, we have, typically we sit on the board of companies that we invest in. We have very serious conversations around when somebody comes knocking to stick their hand up and say, hey, look, we might like to own your business. We want to make sure that that acquirer is going to help that business fulfill its destiny. And if it's not a good home, even if it's a really, really attractive exit, we may very well pass. So I'll stop there and take comments from some of the other panelists.
Thank you, Rob. One of you guys?
Well, first time I ever heard the word exit strategy was actually by somebody in the ICA. This was in late 2007. I didn't know what it meant. And it sounded like...
I'm sure that was Jim Harris.
No, it was Mimi.
Was it Mimi?
Yeah, it was Mimi. I met Mimi was an employee of the ICA, and I struggling with getting organized and trying to deal with growth. Somebody told me about the ICA, so I called her up, and she came over and she looked around our roastery and was like, "Oh, this looks great. Do you have a P&L?" And I was like, "Wow, what does that stand for?" I didn't know. So late in 2007, now profit and loss. So, take that down. So, as a concept, it was foreign to me just because, as a musician, you're a musician, and that's what you are until presumably you die or go into the coffee business. So it gets brought up, and I think it's important to think of making something valuable, and if you make something valuable, then sort of one's own needs will be taken care of if there does, whatever you want to call it, an exit event. So I do think about making good choices to make the company more valuable and by whatever method we're measuring that. But that's about as far as I think about it.
You've certainly been doing that.
Cool, thanks.
Keiko, you have somebody right here? Uh-huh.
I had a question for the entrepreneurs. I'm interested to hear about how Inner City Advisors has helped your business success. And then secondly, since you're not listening to Gustav Holst anymore, what do you listen to when you roast coffee?
Well, that's one of the weird things now. It's like I have one of those things and it says CEO on it. And so I do like CEO stuff. I don't actually work shifts on bar. I don't roast a lot of coffee anymore. I write emails. I go to meetings. I cup a lot of coffee. I make a lot of coffee-related decisions. But just in terms of my actual tangible work, it's much the sort of the tangible product that I produce now is much lower than it was when I was actually roasting coffee. I had a day about a week and a half ago. I kept counting. It was like I got 95 emails and I responded to 32 of them, and I had 3 meetings. And then I was outside our roasters in Oakland, and there's a retail space and it had a little sandwich board, and there was like bird poop that went on the sandwich board, and I cleaned off the sandwich board. And that was like, at the end of the day, it's like, wow, that's the one like tangible thing that I did that day was clean bird poop, which is like, in a certain sense, that's CEO stuff too. But, so I don't roast coffee. basically. I'll be around the roaster, I'll cup a lot of coffee, but I'm not on the floor roasting coffee. But I still listen to a lot of classical music. I never got tired of the Mozart Requiem. I never got tired of Olivier Messiaen Quartet for the End of Time. There's a lot of things I listen to. My son, who's now 7.5, I spend a lot of time listening to Weezer and Green Day now because he's in control of the iPod. So that's my basic repertoire.
Jason?
Oh, I can speak about this for a long time, but I'll keep it short. Well, I have 2 business partners three business partners in our in our business. So there's always relationship management. It's nice to have like an outside perspective of what's going on internally, and that's those issues with exit strategies and those. When we started the organization, we designed it so that someone's wife or someone's child wouldn't be an interested director or part of the business, because we were like thinking that would be not fun, and what if that lady, she or he or whatever way it goes, that person may not know a lot about the business. And so when we were designing, as soon as we had enough money for legal fees, which was several years into the process, we thought it would be prudent, and that's actually not a good time to do it. It's good to do it in the beginning, but we learned, and so basically we started that way, and so we kind of locked it up so that, and kind of managing that and managing the expectations around what that is, and learning. It's a big learning curve for someone who's like, I don't know, never been in a situation before. So it really helps to have the ICA and its advisors, and Michael and Jose and Sean, everybody else, because a lot of those concepts were new, and there's a big learning curve that needs from. I'm coming out of business school. I've fundamentally learned these concepts, but there's a lot of emotional intelligence that goes into them, and kind of like being aware of those is something that ICA helped out a lot with. And then I would say helping we're growing, I would say, if not beyond our sustainable growth rate, at it, very close to it. And what that sustainable growth rate is like pushed in every direction by the management of the business. So we are, we're consumer products, goods, just like Cheryl, that was doing the Rev Foods branded product line. So we have a inventory, and we do the manufacturing. So now we have not only inventory capital investment, AR capital investment, AR investment, and then so that's our receivables lines, our inventory, which now is like, that's getting longer, and then we have equipment. So that's like a lot to think about. And where do you start? Well, I think you start by writing all of that down and then emailing it to the guys at ICA and women and saying like, okay, this is where I'm at. What do I do next? Or so just someone to, and everybody's helped a lot with that. Kat, and we bank with One Pacific Bank, and that's been an amazing experience. Like I'll say, just like Ben back there was like, amen. This is what we need in a bank. So, but that's how I see ICA. It really brings value. It brings a level of experience that we don't have.
Yeah, and just from my perspective, somebody to call up, it's like, oh, I'm having, what do I do about X? And then, well, let's have a meeting. Let me call up, a few people. Let's get you some answers. I don't know the answer, but there might be 2 or 3 other people we can introduce you to that can help you out. We've got a couple different people in our company that talk to the ICA pretty regularly. And it's just like having that as a resource, having that great Rolodex, that great, few people that they can call on for ideas or help or good information is really, without like finding a consultant or paying somebody who might have their own agenda. It's really been helpful for us. Because I'm very basic skills, very tenuous skills in terms of business.
Thank you. One over here. There's one in the back.
So how do you put together your team? And this can be a question for both the entrepreneurs and for the investors. That team is so important. You know, you started off with maybe who you went to school with or whatever, but how do you continue to grow your team and make sure that you have the right people around you when you're working day to day?
Kat, will you start with that one?
I'm very lucky in the company I keep, and we started with a team that was disgruntled with the outcome of the election that John Kerry didn't win. So there was a certain common ground there, but I'm not sure it was sort of the secret sauce for management success. But what it has produced is an all-star team like Rob, who quit their day job at one point and went into operating roles, which is very helpful. Outside of the board, I think it was tricky for us because we had a highly experimental idea. It probably looked like it had a very low chance of success. So the people who came on either were crazy mission motivated or lacked options, I suppose. I don't know. But, and I think management is like such an art and not a science in some really, or at least the stumbling blocks I run into, I like to characterize as art, not science. But anyway, it's a work in progress. The team has to have mission embrace, and they can come to it or they came with it. If they don't have it, something's going to happen that's just untenable for them and untenable for us. And we need to do a much better job of mission orientation at the outset. We kind of just opened the doors and said, come on, we got to get going. We're late already. But the people on the bus concept.
Rob, you want to comment on that?
Sure. It's, I think in all of our businesses across the board, they're all talent driven. And the most important judgments that we make are, who it is we recruit onto the team in order to try to execute the mission and the game plan. For us, it's kind of a twofold approach. We want folks who are, again, the best that we can find. I mean, we just want the very, the most experience, given the level that they're coming into the organization, the most technically competent, and the most fired by mission. And once again, to echo Kat's comments, if those things get out of balance, you end up with results that don't work, right? And it's, we're in a business that, the private equity venture business, I mean, it is intensely profit-oriented. I mean, that, the most highly driven, money-focused folks in the world end up gravitating towards, domains and businesses where, they can become eligible to work in this particular space. And so it's a bit of a neat trick to find people who come out of these environments and therefore, have to have some of the characteristics that you need to succeed in those environments, and then come into our environment where you absolutely need those skills. And I have my team members distributed in the crowd, and we have these conversations literally daily. To come out of those environments into our environment where there is this mission element, there is this broader set of considerations that we take very seriously. And I got to tell you, it's, in order to get the skills that you need to do this work well, you got to be competitive in the marketplace from a compensation standpoint, from the quality of the experience, so on and so forth. But even that's not enough, right? If they're not going to be gratified by the kind of work that we do, it's not going to work. They'll be better off, going into a mainstream private equity or venture capital fund and maybe doing some volunteer work around the edges or, whatever floats their boat in that regard. So, it's a challenge. It's one that we manage actively on a daily basis. And so far we've been very fortunate in finding, extremely competent folk who get what we're up to and feel terrific to be working with entrepreneurs like my fellow panelists.
So Rob's number 2, Bill, is here. Bill, raise your hand. And I know Bill very well. So Rob, what happens when you make a bad hire? No.
We haven't gotten there yet. So as we do, we'll
anybody who
keep
knows
you posted.
Bill is the man. Absolutely the man. Unbelievable. Last question.
Okay. Hello.
Hey.
So I was wondering, what specific metrics do you use to measure your social impact? And how, for the entrepreneurs, how do you demonstrate your social impact to the lenders?
I guess
The specific metrics would be for the lenders.
Well, I think the focus on organic products is like the starting point for us. So we also sell the idea of organic food products and sustainable ag to non-organic food. So that's non-organic food manufacturers, or what we call conventional, whatever that means. So that's the starting part. And then really it's about, for our community part of our mission, it's about job creation. That's something that we've absorbed from ICA's mission. So I feel like we're delivering well on that, and also like paying a living wage and getting everybody up on the medical plans and like trying to educate like why this is important. You need, some people know because they've had a problem, unfortunately, and they're like, but we have to sell the idea that like, we're paying for the medical. You need to pay like, $25 every paycheck, but it's good, do it, I think that's important, and providing on that. And then the other part that's really important to us and to me is the sustainability part of our, so training, constantly training on waste, constantly doing like the research on the what you saw in the picture on the slide earlier with the film, trying to do the packaging research to try to make that film biodegradable, which is like James said it already. So focusing on those types of things and kind of thinking about the sustainability, pushing the edges as much as we can with all that's going on.
James?
I think for us, it's very similar. We think about percentage of our products that are organically certified. I think our coffee, 94% of the coffee that we buy is organically certified. So, we do account with that. We think about waste stream a lot, those adorable cups that you got. We just got those in a few weeks ago. They're lined with PLA, which is a corn-based film. So it's 100% compostable in almost every jurisdiction. And you didn't need them for this context, but the lids are PLA too. So the lids are not plastic. So we think about our waste stream. We did a survey through our company, not Brooklyn, but the West Coast part, and we're 70% of our waste, this is by volume, is compostable, and 20 is recycled, and 10% is landfill. And a big chunk of that are those stupid soy Tetra Pak boxes. If we could get, packaging is so important, both in on our perspective, what we're packaging our products with, but what our vendors are packaging their products with. So we think about that. We think about, for us, in terms of professionalizing our workforce, that's something that we can quantify. We like to have as high percentage of full-time employees that we can. We classify full-time as 35 hours or more, and I think we're close to 85 or 88% of our workforce is full-time, and that's in an industry that that is very often characterized by part-time workers. And then we have, we think about our healthcare. We try to, because a lot of our work is physical, my own work excluded. We think about having good benefits that go beyond going to Kaiser, which is great. It's really important. So we have an 80% plan. 80% of we pay 80% of their healthcare coverage, and that's Kaiser, Vision Dental, acupuncture, chiropractic, and I hear more about acupuncture and chiropractic, I think, than I do about, going to Kaiser for flu shots. So those are all measurable things, and job creation. We keep account of those and send it to ICA at the end of the year, and that's important for us to, keep hiring, because I think we did another count. 85% of our managers, our salaried managers, are people that started with us as line baristas or line production work.
Okay. That's all the time we have, unfortunately. And please give a round of applause to this remarkable panel. And I would like to, Carrie's been coming in and out. I just want to say I gave her a hard time, and she was smiling. I think she's okay. And I just want to say personally, I've been able to teach here, and it has been an outstanding experience. I met some remarkable women here, phenomenal women. The future looks great, looks fantastic. Oh, and there's 2 men, but they're not so phenomenal. No, I'm just I love them all, fantastic. So thanks for everything. Thanks, Deborah, very much. Okay.